Cheers.
Bing.
Part 2.
Part 2.
So yesterday we were talking about obviously business and relationships. I know a lot of your clients are business partners and life partners. Mm-hmm. What do you think's the secret sauce or the recommendation on how to balance that, have a really good flourishing relationship outside of business, but then also be able to be business partners and do that in a healthy way?
For us, it's clear delineation of roles and also healthy boundaries. It's not particularly original, and my wife and I have just started working together in business, which is interesting because it's something that we said we would never do. When I actually remember, my wife didn't know what I did for the first 6 months of us dating because all I would do is get on planes and go places and see clients, and she'd be like, "You a drug dealer? What's going on?" And I remember saying to her when we first got together, because I said to a lot of the people I work with, they're husbands and wives, and they're in business together, I have zero interest in ever working with you. I love you. I think you're amazing. I want a partner first and not interested in that. And now we're working together. So I think it's clear delineation of roles. If I flip it, the couples that have the hardest time, they're constantly meeting each other with different hats on. Like one of them is showing up with the business owner hat on when the other is showing up with the parent hat on. And then an hour later, that one shows up with the parent hat on and this one shows up with the lover hat on. And then the next day, one shows up with the salesperson hat on because that's the role they play in the business. And then the other person is showing up with the I just want to be me, hat on. And that's where so much of the tension comes from. So I think it's clear delineation of roles, and it's actually sitting down and having the conversation about what role is most important, which Maddie and I just did. So a couple of weeks ago when we were starting this business, we sat down and we said, okay, what are the hats that we wear? And literally we're going to rank order them in most important to least important. It doesn't mean we're going to get it perfect, and it's still challenging to manage, but for us both to be on the same page about, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, this is the most important role that I want you to play in my life. For me, the most important role for her to play is the role of my wife and my lover. Business partner, team member, all of that is irrelevant. And it was interesting because my initial sense was to say mother, parent of my child first, then my wife and my lover, then my business partner, then a colleague and team member. But quite quickly I was like, no, actually it needs to be you and I first, because in order for her to prosper, you and I have to be on the same page. If she comes first, it'll be good for her, but it actually won't be great for her, because you and me being in sync is what creates everything else. It creates the household, it creates the relationship, it creates the business. So rank ordering the hats that we wear for each other, and then being really clear on, if push comes to shove and I have to choose between one or two, we know which one we're going to choose. And that's such a superpower when things are hard, just understanding the order of priority, and clear boundaries. Like every couple does it differently, but again, I think that's where the hats come in. So many of the couples that I talk to are like, I don't remember the last time we actually just sat down and connected as people. Or we go out to dinner and someone's phone dings and all of a sudden it's, tomorrow with that client, we have to make sure we do blah, 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 blah. Date gone. Romance destroyed. So being able to put firm boundaries in place and both of you lovingly holding each other to account of those standards, probably the two most important things for balancing. And you're going to get it wrong. And when you do get it wrong, can you repair with grace? Or does it become a point scoring match? Because, I mean, more broadly than just being in business together, with relationships in general, the moment you get into point scoring, it's downhill.
Me versus you versus us versus the issue or the challenge that we're facing.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. In terms of boundaries, like how would you suggest people go about setting them and like that process?
I think you start with what's meaningful. Like, I have certain things that are really meaningful to me. So my love language is physical touch, for example. That's like 85%, and then the other 4 are like somewhere in there at a few percent each. I know that about myself. I know that for me, I need 60 to 90 minutes each day. That's just my time. I'm not dealing with clients. I'm not dealing with team. I'm not dealing with the demands of all the people that I serve and I love serving. That's me time. So those 2 things for me are part of the boundaries. Like, if we, once we go lights down at 7:30, and we kind of just spend the last hour or 2 with low light in the house, because that's, without getting into the ice baths and the body hacking and stuff like that, like that's one of the things that we do to just wind ourselves down. And that's been a challenge in the last few weeks because we've had so many things to do with this new venture. But that's a now problem. When it's lights down, there's no business talk. This is our connection time. If we are having a moment on the couch, or just having a moment, it's really important to me that we get physical connection. It's not holding hands and walking around the park while we talk about business. No, we have us time. It's really important to me that I get my 60 to 90 minutes. And Maddie knows that. And it doesn't happen every day. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. But I think in setting boundaries, you have to have the self-awareness to know what you want. And you have to be comfortable saying, this is what's really important to me, without feeling guilt or shame or any of the 100 things that I've felt practicing that, because I never used to be able to ask for the things that I wanted. So it's starting with the things that are most important to you and requesting that your partner meet you as much as they can, and doing everything that you can to meet your partner on their boundaries and the things that they need to fill their cup. And it's not about you when it comes to their boundaries. You may look at that and say, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, that makes no sense, whatever. And I have absolutely done that. But it's not about you. Like, if someone is going to go out on a limb enough to ask you for the things that are most important to them, who are you to judge or criticize why they're asking for what they're asking for? Just give it to them.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think oftentimes people, again, they address like, these are my boundaries, but no, I want to respect yours as much as I want to, insert mine. Why do you feel like it was hard for you to speak for your needs and boundaries early on?
Something came up as you were saying that. I just want to speak back to boundaries. I can't remember her name. She's a child psychologist. And I think her name's Erica something. And she said something about boundaries that I loved. She said, a boundary is not something that you need someone else to do. A boundary is something that you enforce for yourself.
Amazing. So good.
How good is it? Because I think there's so much of that. It's like, well, that's one of my boundaries and blah, blah, blah. So you need to not do this, or you need to whatever. No. A boundary is something that I take responsibility for because it's something I want or I need in my life.
Love that.
So, babe, I'm going to go upstairs and have an hour to myself because that's what I need. I'm not telling you don't come and talk to me for an hour. I'm saying I'm putting myself away. This is my time, and that's really important to me. And if that can't happen for some reason, she's not breaching my boundary. I haven't done what was required for me to get my time to meet my boundary with myself. Boundaries don't need other people to bend around you. You actually have to take responsibility for your needs. So that's really helped.
That's really cool. Yeah.
That's really helped. But in terms of why was it hard? Oh, because I had low self-worth. I just thought, who am I to ask for the things that I want? I'm putting other people out, I'm making demands. I had a lot of stories around being arrogant and entitled when I was young, for 100 different reasons. But I think if I look at my makeup, I'm highly collaborative. I'm quite averse to conflict. I don't enjoy conflict at all. My role as the middle child, as one of six, and in a like broken home with parents, was I was the mediator, I was the problem solver, I was the neutralizer, I was the one that was always smoothing things out as much as I could. So that pattern became very entrenched. And then when it came to partnerships and relationships, I just had no ability to confidently and with certainty ask for something without feeling like I was taking from someone else. Because again, like it always comes back to it, but I hadn't actually taken responsibility for my needs. And what's really interesting is that the shadow side of that is that I felt guilty asking for something or saying what I needed. And I was so over-enthusiastic about trying to help other people and give everyone else what they needed. That wasn't because I was a good guy or confident and generous and everything else. There was a massive shadow of resentment to that earlier behavior of mine, because every now and then that dragon would rear its head and I would just spew my vial onto the world with resentment, anger, frustration. Why does no one value me? Everyone else is so da-da-da-da. Because I hadn't integrated the fact that I'm a human and I have needs. And again, it's my responsibility to meet my needs. It's not someone else's. It's not my wife's job to make me happy. My job is to make me happy and to bring the best version of myself to my relationship.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so that's sort of in the doing life together context. What about business? You spoke about roles and boundaries. How's that show up in business? Like, how do you know who's responsible for what? How do you... Yeah, because I feel like that in itself, for a lot of business partnerships, regardless if it's life or not, people kind of just, what's our roles and responsibilities? What's our boundaries? What do we focus on?
Floppy lettuce everywhere. Just floppy lettuce. So this is the same as whether you're a husband and wife in business trying to work out your roles, or if this is with a team member. Like, it has to be out of your heads. It has to be out of your heads. You both need to be able to look at something and point and say, those 7 things, that is an operation manager's role. We're all in agreement. There's no fluff, there's no blur. Those 7 things are what you do. And it's about differentiating the person from the role. Like, again, with a business has seats, and different people sit on those seats at different points in time. Just because Johnny has been your leading hand for the last 6 years, Johnny's not your leading hand. Johnny sits in the role of leading hand. That's a hat that he wears. And if Johnny's not performing, or if Johnny decides to go somewhere else, Johnny leaves, the seat stays, the hat stays, and you put someone else in it. And that's like a 2%er in frame, but it's really, really helpful, because I was literally saying this to a client earlier in the week. You only ever have 2 options when it comes to people in business. You build your business around your people, or you mold your people to your business. And most small business owners build their business around their people, because you have to be scrappy when you start business, and you find your 1 or 2 lifers. They're your early stage people that are with you, and everyone's doing 17 roles and working huge hours, and you're growing. And but as you grow, you know, Jessica is amazing at technology and she's an amazing salesperson, but she also does a little bit of bookkeeping because that's one of the things she enjoys, and blah, blah, blah. That's great. But if you grow a business too far with that structure and you don't transition from, okay, we're not in the scrappy stage anymore, we need structure and consistency and certainty and boundaries and clear lines of responsibility, what you end up with is a business that is just filled with key person risk. And it's wickedly ineffective because you have one person hopping between 3 or 4 seats on the bus for no other reason than because, well, that's Jessica and she's amazing. It's like, well, that's great, but the business is now suffering. And I think this concept of if you can have the awareness and the humility to listen to the business. It will tell you what it needs.
The business's own identity.
It's its own. You're
Yep.
there, I'm here. If we put a third seat there, that's the business. And if you actually look at the business and if you listen to the business will tell you what it needs. Whether that's through the form of its numbers, through the P&L, through the KPIs or the key metrics that you measure performance in the business, the people and the culture, the feel and the energy of the team, the business will tell you what's going on. The problem is most business owners think that they are the business, and it's all just, again, you're a kite in a hurricane.
How do you, again, separate from that? Because I hear two things there. There's the identity around the business is me, and that identity, and separating the two. But then also in the startup early adoption phase, all the things, you do have to wear 10 different hats, and it is chaotic, and you're spinning all the plates and all the things. Like, how do you know, number one, when do we need to start clear lines of responsibility, JDs, all the things? And then number two, how does a business owner actually separate themselves from that identity?
Well, the first one's way easier, which is just when stuff starts to break. Like one business may only be able to get to 500 grand in revenue, and then they're like, we need role descriptions and job descriptions and org charts and all of that. Another bit, like I have seen businesses that are doing like $2, $3, $4 million in revenue. No one has job descriptions. They don't even have contracts for their clients. There's zero systems, and it's all just in the business owner's head, which is, it's like so horrific, it's impressive.
Yeah.
You can actually run a business like that. But the costs of that are also huge. So I think the when do you do it is just when stuff breaks. And again, it comes back to that awareness of looking in the mirror, listening to your own voice and your own gut and saying, is this hard because it's just hard? Or is this hard because I'm not actually giving the business the structure that it needs? In terms of disidentifying from the business, I think that's a journey that you have to go through in business. You don't get to bypass it. You can't take a magic pill and just arrive at the awareness that you're not the business. Because any business is birthed through the business owner. Like we are the conduit that takes something from an idea to something in the real world that has team and revenue and clients and real world tangible stuff. But I'm a big believer in do what works until it doesn't work. Like you don't need to fix something that's not broken. That doesn't mean you don't improve something that can be better. But if you're waking up and you're loving life and things are going great and you're making progress and you're achieving your goals and the people around you are also enjoying what they're doing and having a good time, maybe you are still identified with the business, but it's working. So you don't need me to tell you, you need to go and, disidentify from the business because that's actually not the correct way to do it. Like if your life is working, do it. One of my really big pet peeves about my industry and what I do is there are so many talking heads that will tell you these are the 5 L's of leadership and these are the 7 S's of sales and you should be scaling, you should be getting your business under management, you should be thinking big, you should be thinking small, you should do whatever. And I think business owners especially are so programmed to looking outside of themselves, finding a voice that looks and feels like it has enough authority, and then taking that on board as gospel instead of that's just a voice. That style works for that person because that person wants to scale to $1 billion company and do an exit. That's fantastic. Johnny, the local plumber that just wants to have 2 apprentices and be able to take a day off every second week, doesn't need to be thinking about building $1 billion business. And that might sound obvious, but the amount of business owners that don't even know what they want or where they want to go to with their business vehicle is insane. And it's only because no one has ever actually told them, or they don't actually believe that they are capable of picking up the pen and saying, I want to go from here to here, and that's going to be great. And now I just need to find someone that can help me, with this individual element of my business. I think in business, because there is an impossibly long list of skills to build and things to learn how to do that we know that we need to learn from people, but we can fall into the trap of not listening to our own voice when it comes to the direction. And it's inspiring. Like, it's inspiring to see some person talking about the $400 million exit that they did or whatever. It's super inspiring. But do you want what comes with a $400 million exit? Do you want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and not see your kids until they're 14 and forget what their names are and all that stuff? That it doesn't have to be that way, but chances are it's probably going to be that way. Like, you get to choose. Life is a choose your adventure story. And I think you identify with the business until it starts to break. And when it breaks, you have to have the humility to go, okay, this isn't working. And ideally, you have other people in your corner that you can go to that are maybe a little bit further along than you. And be like, oh, struggling, like, feels like it's all on you. Yeah, man, let me share with you what I did. Other people have the key. Someone else has dealt with what you're dealing with. You just need to find them, and you need to have the humility to ask for help.
Man, there's so many different rabbit holes I want to go down. Yeah, but it's what I get from that. I mean, I get a lot of things, but what I get is being the architect. So beginning with the end in mind. So being the architect of your business, but then also being the bricklayer. So if you're just the architect, nothing's going to get done because you're just sitting in this visionary la la land.
Yeah.
But if you're just the bricklayer, then you don't know what you're building. It's just one brick at a time. And so if you have the context of both, it's begin with the end in mind and then come back to now and take action on the things that you need to take action on. And that kind of leads me to one of the philosophies you use in your business consulting, which is theory of constraints. Tell me more about that.
So, theory of constraints is not mine. So, it's a principle that I have worked through and used. I just never had a name for it. And then Alex Hormozy did a video about it, and I was like, it was like God's given gift coming down from the mount and just handing the perfect words to describe that approach. And what I love about that approach is it makes so much of the bullshit that business coaches teach irrelevant. You don't need the snazzy 7-step process. You don't need some massive, complicated planning system. Those things are good, and for certain businesses, they're useful. But if I could go back to my younger self when I was first starting business, I wouldn't have listened to me. But I would give myself the concept of the theory of constraints. If there was only one thing I could teach myself, that's how powerful it is. So there's different versions of describing what it looks like, but my take on it is, think about your business like a system. Every system is just a process and it has inputs and outputs. So your inputs are going to be materials, labor, intellectual property, whatever it is. Outputs are going to be products and services and profit to the business. And then you have a few steps in between. That's the system. Theory of constraints says that your business, your system, is going to have thousands of steps, thousands of bottlenecks, but there's only going to be one primary constraint that is holding your business system back from producing more outputs, more products and services, more profit. And when I was thinking about this, it makes total sense because as business, by virtue of the fact that you're in business, you're going to have so many more problems in the day-to-day than you are going to have time and resources to allocate to solving those problems. So by that logic, every business owner has to constantly make the decision about what they ignore and what they focus on. And most business owners are really bad at that because, like I said, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail and we just love solving problems. But if you go and solve 20 problems that are not the constraint in your business, nothing changes. And I've experienced that for myself. I have had periods in business where I've worked my guts out to solve things, put systems in place, hire someone, whatever. And then I get 3 months down the line and profit's the same, revenue's the same. I mean, revenue's the same, profit's down because of whatever I've invested in improving. And maybe things are slightly more efficient or effective, but it doesn't matter because the fundamental output for a business is products and services and profit. Because if you don't have those two outputs, the whole system dies. So theory of constraints basically says, analyze your system, identify what the primary constraint is. What is the key constraint? Not what are the top 10 constraints, or what's the constraint that you feel comfortable solving, or the constraint that's really sexy and is going to get you zazzed about doing business. What is your business telling you is the primary constraint? And there's some systems and some skill sets into identifying and differentiating what the primary constraint is. But once you find it, fix it and ignore everything else. And Eric of 10, 12 years ago, starting in business, would not have done that, because I loved the ego fix of solving all these problems and working on all these different things at the same time, because I confused activity for results and activity for achievement. It's not about how hard you work, although hard work is required. It's about who can identify the primary constraint and solve it, and then do that again faster and faster. If you just did that, most people in business would at minimum grow and become more profitable, and at best just strap a rocket to their business. But it takes discipline. It takes discipline to see a problem in your business, know that you could fix it, know that it would produce some type of a beneficial outcome, and still walk past it every day. It's like walking into your kitchen and bumping your leg on the coffee table and being like, fuck, I need to move that coffee table. But it's not the primary constraint. Then the next morning, bumping your leg, fuck, I need to move that coffee table, but not doing it, because every second of time and attention and every dollar that you spend resolving a problem in your business that is not the primary constraint is literally a waste of resources. Doesn't mean it doesn't feel good to solve things. Because if you solve the primary constraint, what are you going to have? You're going to have more products and services and more profit. And when you have more profit, you can reallocate that profit to solving the next constraint, which creates more profit, which means the next constraint. And if you do that enough times, you get to the point, and I know business owners that are at that point, that are kind of sitting there like, I don't know, let's do a rebrand. Like, let's make ourselves look prettier. I need to put this profit somewhere, because they solve the primary constraint first. And if I can add one other thing psychologically that I've seen, I see a lot of business owners make the mistake of spreading themselves thin because it feels good, but also genuinely sometimes in business, your primary constraint is not something you can resolve in a week. It might be something that takes a couple of months to solve, and you can't be working on it 24/7, or in reality, you're not going to. So they're like, right, well, okay, I've got my primary constraint, but I'm also going to do this, then I'm also going to do that, and it starts to bleed out their attention. So the way I describe it to my clients is, let's say over the course of the year, there was only 10 major achievements that you could get in business, 10 constraints you could solve, 10 priorities you could achieve. You have two different ways of spending a year. Way number one is you work on all of them at the same time. So you get to the end of January, every one of those constraints is 10% solved. You get to February, they're all 20% solved, 30, 40, 50. Come June, you've achieved nothing. You've got a lot of, on a bar graph, a lot of bars that are rising, but you've achieved nothing. Option number two is you go, right, January is priority number one, 0 to 100, bang, done. February, constraint number two, 0 to 100, bang, done. The end result at the end of the year is the same. You both get 10 priorities done. But how different is the journey? Like, how much more palatable is a year of going, it's June, we've already crushed these 5 things. Next month is that one. We've had a couple of setbacks, but it's all good. Versus you come to June and you're like, I haven't ticked a single thing off. Like, psychologically, emotionally, and energetically, to me at least, that is so much a better way of doing business. But it takes discipline. And I have had clients that I have not forced, that's not the right word, but I have very strongly recommended that they sit in the stillness of not doing. If you can't work on your constraint and you're not doing your operational day-to-day stuff, fucking sit there and stare at a wall. Do not allow yourself to get distracted, because what will probably happen is you'll sit there for like 15 or 20 minutes and you'll get itchy feet, and then you'll be like, you know what? Actually, there is something I can do to that constraint. I can go and find that second person, or I can see if I can get someone else to move things faster, or I can research that because I know the next step of solving that constraint is going to be this. So while that ticks along, I can go and start prepping to keep things moving. And it's just so much more powerful. Like, again, even if all things were equal at the end of the year and the results were the same, who wouldn't sign up for a way better business experience and life experience? Because then you're a better father or mother when you're at home with your children. You probably take better care of your health because you feel more positive generally. You have more deep relationships. Life is richer, and you're still getting the same thing done by doing nothing else other than changing how you do what you do. Yeah, theory of constraints is like, it should be illegal to just, for people to know about theory of constraints because it's that good for business. It's mind-blowing. And most people walk straight past it because it's not sexy.
Yeah, well, again, you've got to do the work. You've got to lay the individual brick, one brick at a time versus all, the 10,000 things. Again, there's so many side quests I want to go down and questions I want to ask, but how does one identify the primary constraint?
Listen to the business. And in order to identify the primary constraint, you have to have defined an outcome.
Yeah.
So I want to grow doesn't cut it if you want to identify the constraint. So step number one is actually you get super specific on the outcome. We're a plumbing business. We're currently doing 2.2 mil in the South Sydney region. We want to get to 3.5 within the next 18 months. What that looks like is most likely 4 vans, qualifieds and apprentices, a commercial, stream that's doing X amount per month in projects, Now ask me where the constraint is, and it's going to be pretty obvious. Another layer of it is ideally you have good data in your business, otherwise you're just going off gut feel. My general approach when you're identifying the constraint is you are led by your gut, but you make decisions based on the data. Because your gut will probably tell you where you think the constraint is. But you have to have data. And I've had so many clients come to me and say, hey, we're dealing with this. This is our constraint. We need to solve it. And within 20 or 30 minutes of digging, it's like, oh, that's not the constraint at all. We just needed to look at it and really dig down and test whether or not your assumptions are correct. I spoke to someone, this was a while ago, but they were like, I need to increase my sales. I think it's a lead gen issue. We went down the rabbit hole of looking at all their stats. And I said, what's your conversion? They're like, oh, conversion's not a worry. Literally, we're crushing it. We're like 40, 50%, which would have been very high for their product. And it wasn't. It was like 15% when you took into account them and all their salespeople. But that one piece of data changes from, okay, well, let's go dump another $15,000 a month into marketing and let's do this and let's do that, to data. Defined outcomes and data.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really interesting. You spoke about, again, the business owner, and I feel like this translates in business and also in life. And there's a quote here from Chris Williamson.
Your boy.
My boy. The magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. I'm getting goosebumps just reading it out because in my experience, coming from a business consulting background as well, oftentimes we fix everything but the thing we actually know we need to do because it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging. Maybe we don't know actually. It's it's outside of our scope of strength and experience. Yeah, do you feel like that's a part?
100%. Yeah, and the constraint or the problem or the thing being outside of your immediate skill set is actually one of the most common reasons as to why people don't fix the constraint. Because I'm a salesperson first and foremost in business. So anytime a business is having issues, immediately, even though I know all of this, my brain goes to, it's probably a sales issue. Because that's where I look good. If it's a software and automations issue, I can't fucking plug in my phone properly. So it's hard, and it takes humility. And again, you need to disidentify yourself from the business to be able to say, well, the business is saying it's probably an efficiency issue with our software and our systems. Because then you need to acknowledge, okay, well, I can't fix that myself. So I need to go and find a who can either do the work or help me find someone that can do the work. But that is where the magic is. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt. And so many times in my business career, when I felt frustrated with results, or things are not moving fast enough, or why am I the only one that seems to get it, or whatever complaining, resentful voices in my head, when I stop and I zoom out, it's usually because I'm focused on the wrong thing. And the magic is one decision away. It's at your fingertips. And I know a lot of business owners fall into the trap of feeling like they're stuck. Like, I've built this beast and my team need me and my clients are constant and the phone never stops ringing and my inbox, it's got the little bubble that's like got 999 plus in it. And it's so easy to feel trapped. But you can change that with one decision to actually go to the magic and stop avoiding the thing. And you don't even, because chances are there's more than one thing you're avoiding in life. So you don't even need to start with the biggest, hairiest thing that you're avoiding. But I also think it's not just in business. I have known so many business owners who their business has plateaued and their business is great. Like, on paper, everything is really, really good because they're going home every night to a person that they no longer love, in a marriage that is bitterly resentful, and a home that feels like a prison. And then they're wondering why their business isn't growing and improving. I'm like, well, what's your reason for doing it? You're escaping into the business to get away from the thing that you're avoiding there. I'm not a couples psychologist. I'm not a marriage counselor, but I've had so many, like hundreds of those conversations over the last decade with different business owners. And the moment they go and have that conversation to improve the quality of their relationship, or speak out those things that they haven't been speaking, or do something to bring them together, or talk about the fact that they don't want to go in the current direction they're going in, they want to go somewhere else, but they never had the confidence to say it, or whatever, all of a sudden sales start picking up and the team starts walking in the door with a spring in their step, because it's us. Like, we are the nucleus of our business. But you can't, the whole leave your baggage at the door thing is bullshit. Do not believe in that for a second. Human beings in some ways are very good at compartmentalizing, but not really. So how can you expect yourself to crush it in one area of business in a holistic and, I suppose, consistently reliable way, in a sustainable way, when there's other areas of your life that feel like the house is on fire? It's just not going to happen. And sooner or later, other things are going to start catching fire too. I've seen that again and again.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Coming back to, we were chatting a little bit before about, the inspiring business consultant that's sold their business for 400 million and, wanting or aspiring towards the success that brings, whatever that means. I feel like there's, that concept of looking at somebody in one specific area of their life and being like, I want that, but what about all the other things? It's like the frame of, we do this so well as humans. It's like, I'll just take that little bit, and I want that little bit from that person. I want that little bit from that person, and I'll just, create the life that quote unquote I want. But tell me more about, because we have spoken about this before, about the idea of when we aspire to something or somebody, it's like grabbing the, what are the words I'm looking for? It's like understanding that there is a cost to it, everything. And if you want that $400 million business, there is going to be a cost to that in different areas of life. And it's like, again, it comes back to that choose your regrets. Like, what regret are you more comfortably living with? What costs are you more comfortably living with? Tell me more about that idea.
I think if most people were brutally honest with themselves, most people only want a couple of steps above good in most of the areas of their life. Most people don't want to be high performance athletes that dedicate multiple hours a day to training, recovery, meal prep, and everything else. They just want to not be fat and be able to play with their kids and not be out of breath when they go up the stairs. Most business owners don't want to build a 9-figure exit business and everything that comes with that. They want to have a good business that makes them good money, and they're dealing with some problems, but not heaps of problems, and they can take a 6-week holiday or 7-week holiday a year. And I think that's okay. Like, I think there's nothing wrong. Not only is there nothing wrong, I actually think it's a losing game if you do anything other than define your own success. I have clients that I work with that if they can pull 350, 400 grand from the business, and if they can work 30 hours a week, they are stoked. And that's amazing because that's their definition of success. I have other clients that if they're making anything less than $1 million a month in profit, and if they have to touch that business for more than a couple of hours a month, something is seriously wrong. So, but both of those people are correct because they've actually defined it for them. And it's not about, I just think if you use external drivers from other people's version of success, you are bound to A, feel like a disappointment to yourself because you are, and B, end up with a life that you feel resentful towards because it somehow didn't pan out the way that you wanted it. But that's because you're trying to bake a cake with someone else's ingredient list. Like, and I don't think there's anything wrong. I've had many of my goals were based on looking at other people that I admire and respect and saying, well, I want to do that too. But that was the ignition. Like that was what turned me over and got me going. And then along the path, I was like, okay. So public speaking is a great example of that. So when I was in my late teens and my early 20s, I was like, I want to be a public speaker. I want to be speaking to 10,000 people. I want them to all to say my name and all of the ego, all the bullshit. Because I knew people, I had studied people and I had interacted with one or two people that did that. I was like, that's what I want. Sometimes the purpose of the goal is for it to be achieved. Sometimes the purpose of the goal is just to get you moving. And I don't think it's always clear cut because that goal for me got me out of a terrible place that I was in life and really set me on an amazing trajectory. Along the way, as I started to achieve those things, I haven't spoken in front of 10,000 people, but I have spoken in front of 1,000 people. I haven't, stood up the back with a line of 700 people wanting my autograph. I have had people want my autograph. So it's all just degrees of separation. And what I realized as I was going down that path was that goal no longer felt like it would serve me because the version of myself that I was when I set that goal thought it would give me something that present me doesn't actually need anymore because I found it along the way. And so maybe in a way, the real goal was to find self-worth and confidence. I just thought it would come in the form of speaking in front of 10,000 people, but it didn't have to. And I think people do the same thing. Like if you actually sit down and ask yourself for, the 1 in 2 business owners that are like, we want to be the number 1 car repair business in the car repair industry. For all of those, when you sit them down, you say, why? Just why? Oh, because, we want to grow. Why? Oh, because, the competitors, they're taking our clients and we could, why? If you literally just ask why more than 2 or 3 times, people will usually look at you and be like, I have no fucking idea. It's like, great. So now why don't we come back a little bit? Start with the vision of your life. What do you want your relationship to look like with your husband or your wife? What do you want your relationship with your kids to look like? What do you want your health to look like? What do you want your own kind of personal life, whether it's passions or hobbies or travel or experience in the world to look like? What do you want your money and your wealth to look like? What do you want the later years of your life to look like when you're not doing 70, 80 hours a week? If you build that out and if you're honest with yourself, I think success, I wouldn't say it's easy to define, but I think it becomes far less daunting. Because I don't, like, present you is probably not capable of defining what success looks like because you haven't done the work. But also, if you were that version of you, you would already be well and truly on the way to doing it. Like, you probably just need to start with a smaller goal. Like, I'm not one of these set yourself a 10-year mission for your business. Like, I know people that invested 30 grand in getting a specialist consultant into their business to build a 5 and 10-year strategic plan for their business in January of 2020. How much was that plan worth by March 2020 when COVID had rolled out and borders were closing? Fucking zero. So you don't know what's going to happen, and that's not a reason to not plan. But I think it is so attractive to focus on things that are further down the path. Again, avoiding doing the thing. Let's actually just focus on what we want the business to look like in the next 90 days. And maybe we have some type of an idea that at some point we want to get to an exit, or at some point we want to move into state, or at some point we want to expand into a 10th location. But it doesn't need to be any more than that. The more micro you go with your time scale, the more specific your plan should be. And the more macro, the more general it should be. And again, sometimes the purpose of the goal is not to be achieved. The purpose of the goal is just to get you moving.
Yeah, there's a quote. It's the purpose of a goal is not for you to achieve it. It's for you to become the person capable of achieving it.
Yeah,
I love that. And there's that macro micro of being able to, like, think in decades, but take action, like, in the now of like what's right in front of me. But know that I know I've got the end in mind and it's somewhat clear, but it's coming back to what do I need to do that's right in front of me, because we can get stuck in the idea of the future and the fantasy of that.
Absolutely. And I think it also requires radical honesty with self first before you can then be honest with the world. I have known more men than women who, when I've taken them through like a vision exercise for getting those categories clear so they can then go, cool, well, based on that, building a $400 million business does not align, so I need to choose. I've had more than one or two men go through that process and break down in tears because for the first time ever, they're actually acknowledging and saying to themselves and then to me, I love my children. I'm proud of my children. My children are the fourth most important thing in my world based on my current hierarchy. I am not willing to compromise getting to this business goal. And my children are not as important. Going to soccer games, not as important as that. And the guilt and the shame that is associated with that. But that's the truth. So you're actually being a fraud if you go to the soccer game and you're sitting there resenting little Timmy for kicking a goal because you wish you were in the office doing numbers or whatever. That's the truth. And you serve no one by creating a facade of what you think others want your truth to be. Like, own it.
Yeah, well, and that's that concept of when you are seeking your truth, everything that's not the truth must die. And it's painful because you're like, again, using that example, oh, wow, that's fourth on my list. I was pretending that it was first.
Yeah.
And I was putting on a facade. No wonder I feel stressed and incongruent and, yeah, because I'm lying to myself.
Frustrated with life.
Yeah.
And that was it. There was one guy in particular at a business event. We were like rank ordering like areas of life or whatever, and kids were number one. And I was like, I'm going to say his name, Johnny. Johnny. Walk me through your list. And you could see it on his face. Oh, well, number one's my kids, obviously. And then I've got da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, are your kids really number one? And straight away, he went red as a fucking beetroot. I was like, are your kids really number one? Because if they're not, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, like, yeah, of course. Are you sure? And I just think it's okay. Like, it's okay if you're not the type of man that wants to be a super hands-on father and you're there for everything, and you're more of a, distanced father, and you love your children and you provide for children. There are massive reasons as to why you do what you do, but they're not the most important thing. Like, that just actually is reality. So you serve no one by trying to delude yourself or other people. You just create more hurt because you're just spinning a web of lies. Like, the truth hurts way less because it's the truth. Even when the truth is painful, it still hurts way less than a lie.
Well, even I would imagine in that scenario, even just being able to admit that to yourself, you'd show up differently with your kids.
And he did. He actually became a more involved father, at least for the 3 or 6 months after that I was aware of, after saying, I don't want to be involved. Because when he did want to be involved, he was there 100%, rather than dragging himself through a bunch of interactions that he didn't actually want to be there for. And that's the funny paradox is, if you can just find the courage to be honest with yourself, you don't even worry about anyone else. It can just be your little secret with you. If you can just find the courage to be honest and open and transparent and understanding towards yourself, everything downstream of that is easier. But when you're trying to fix a problem and you can't actually be honest about what the problem is or why the problem is there, you could have the solution right in front of you. It's not going to do anything because you're not ready for it.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think it's so hard for somebody to admit something like that to themselves, of actually my kids aren't the most important thing? They're the fourth on my values hierarchy. Why do you think that is? And it happens in life and business and all the different areas.
I just think being honest is hard because of all the downstream thoughts of what does that make me? What are other people going to think of me? Am I wrong? I think a lot of it comes back to a place of feeling disempowered to be able to live life the way that you want, not live your authentic truth, yes queen bullshit, but to say, well, this is the concept of sovereignty. I find fascinating because I think we have lost the truth that we are sovereign individuals. I'm born into this world, I will live and die, and for the time that I'm here, yes, we have to abide by laws, and yes, we all live within a community and a society, and yes to all of those layers. But on the most fundamental level, I am a sovereign individual. I hold the pen to my story. I can decide what I want to do or not do and the way that I want to do it. And I don't actually have to justify or rationalize to anyone why I want to do what I want to do. We don't teach that to people. You're born, you get raised hopefully by present parents, potentially not. You get dropped into the school system. The school system at this stage just kind of teaches you to memorize stuff and feed it back, and it doesn't encourage critical rational thinking. It doesn't traditionally encourage people to mold themselves into a person that can self-author. It molds people into the mold. And I think any society that thrives is a society that is bound together on countless levels, from the individual to the collective. But I think if the thread of each individual knowing in their core that they are a sovereign individual, I think if that thread is missing, the whole tapestry gets weak. And I just don't think we're encouraged. Well, I don't think we're encouraged. Not only encouraged, people are told, you're not your own person. You can't be that. And I don't think they're even necessarily told. I just think it's implied in everything that you do. Like, we are so over-regulated. We have do not drink labels on fucking bottles of bleach. Like, that's insane. And I understand the legal concept as to why. But that's at that point, whoever was the dude that was like, we need to put do not drink on bleach bottles, that was when society started going downwards. Because like, you don't get to live your life in a perfect bubble wrapped experience where nothing goes wrong and there are no risks. Risks are baked into life. Nothing is guaranteed. Almost everything that is valuable must be worked for at the sacrifice of other things that you could work for. Opportunity cost is endless. And I just don't think people feel that powerful in their own life. Most people. I think most people feel wildly disempowered by the way that they live, because no one has ever told them, you hold the pen. Because every day when we move through society, there are 1,000 conscious and subconscious messages that say, just stay within the bumpers, just stay within the lane and everything will be fine. Don't go too fast, don't go too slow, don't sway from side to side, don't look at anyone else, just stay within the lines. And there's so much magic outside the lines.
I get the sense, it's like unplugging from the matrix. Everyone kind of looks at you it requires a lot of self-confidence and self-belief if you sway from the path and go on the unbeaten, which is your own. There is inevitably a lot of judgment. There's inevitably, a lot of resistance. There's inevitably doubt that comes with it, but it's much more empowering if you just find the truth and keep seeking the truth and walking towards the truth.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson has a quote that I do my best to live by as much as I possibly can, which is tell the truth. If you can't tell the truth, at least don't lie. And that if you want to have the adventure of your life, just tell the truth. Just speak truth. You don't need to conquer the world. You don't need to do some crazy thing. Just speak the truth into the world moment by moment. If something happens and you don't agree, don't sit there and nod and just be like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't agree with that. And watch what happens. Watch the ripples that come from not only people in the broader community, the people closest to you will cause the biggest ripples when you start to speak the truth and be authentic and autonomous and come from your own place of sovereignty. Because they're the people usually that have the greatest vested interest in you staying the same. Because if you do something different, if you speak truth, if you grow, if you build new skills, if you go on new adventures, what you're actually doing is threatening them because you're demonstrating that you've changed your life by choice, which means that technically they could change their life by choice. But if their life isn't the way that they want it to be, they then need to face the reality that that's because it's their responsibility and they're not doing something. And it's far easier to beat you into submission than it is for me to face my own shadow and all the things that I'm not doing and all the truth I'm not speaking and protect my own facade that is scaffolding all around it to try and duct tape it together. It's easier just to tell you, who are you to do a podcast? Who are you to start a business? You think you are. You want to leave your corporate job and go and be an artist. Don't be an artist, they make no money. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the sense I get as you're speaking is there is people that will come into your life and cheer you on as you become more authentic.
Yes.
And it's almost like the world becomes more colorful. You get more champions and more people that want to see you succeed, but then you also get the consequence of more judgment and more people trying to hold you back, because the people that are championing you, they're on their authentic path and they're trying to find the truth as well. The people that typically judge you and try to hold you back and say, well, what are you doing? Oh, that's pretty risky, or whatever it might be. They're the ones that are, like you said, you're shining, you're holding up a mirror to them, so that you're threatening them, so they want to pull you back down. It's both. And then you end up finding who the real ones are in your life.
And the reason to do that, again, this is a nuance, but I think it's really important. The reason to live a truthful life is not to stick it to the man. It's not to be a messiah. It's not to, like show everyone that it's possible and like I'm living and breathing like a way of life that others can follow. That's all fucking ego. The reason to live truth is for you. Because you can lie to everyone else. And some people can actually lie to themselves very convincingly. But if you are deep enough, like I know when I'm deceiving myself. I can hear it and I can feel it in my bones. I believe that 99% of people are like that too. Unless they've spent so long deluding themselves, they don't know what way's up. The reason to live truth and the reason to look in the mirror and actually be honest with yourself and come from a place of self-sovereignty and self-determination is because that's the truth. Like it's a circular definition, but that's the truth. That is the way. It's not for other people, although other people may benefit. It's not for the grandiosity that may come, though we often look up to and aspire people who come from such a source of truth that they carve a path for others to follow. You don't actually need a reason to point to for living or speaking the truth, because truth is the reason.
All the fruits that come with it is the reason. It's not the external thing. It's the feelings, the fruits of presence, of joy, of love, of again, all the fruits of it. And it's for you. It's not for anyone else. Interesting.
But you may need the incentive of becoming a messiah as the starting goal to get you to go down the path of truth, because I know I did. Like I can say that now that I've been living this way for a long time, and I have a confidence and a certainty that means I don't care if someone looks at me and says, "Who are you to do that?" or whatever. That's water off a duck's back. That would have put me in a mental institute 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to deal with that at all. So, and I think that's also really important, is like it's very easy for someone at chapter 30 to give advice that is appropriate to them at chapter 15. But that doesn't work for the person at chapter 15. They need they need the advice that you needed when you were at that stage, which is, man, go out there, conquer, don't listen to the haters, you're different, you can do X, Y, Z. That's actually really important. It's not the deepest form of truth, but it's the form of truth that is most appropriate for that stage to get you moving in the right direction.
Because it was exactly the same for me. It was I want to conquer the world. I want to be that person up on stage, do that thing. It gets you to the point where you need to go until it becomes toxic, and then you need to let it go. It's that, again, different stages of life. You got to meet yourself where you're at. Yeah, I really like that. So I've got a few quotes here. Some are from your website that I'd love your take on.
Are you quoting myself?
Yeah, quoting.
Is that ego?
Yeah, maybe. No. First one's from Freud. One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. Why that one on your website? Why that particular quote?
Because it's true. Because I look at the hardest moments of my life, and it's not through rose-colored glasses. I've been through some things personally that I would never wish on someone intentionally. But already, I'm not at the end of my life, but I can still look back on those things now, and I can see so much beauty in them. Yeah, I don't know how Freud was able to capture that, but it's just the truth. Experientially, it has been the truth for me, and I believe that to be the case, because I think we are profoundly strong and resilient as humans. We're not these weak little things that need to be protected from hardship. Hardship is the way. Struggle, like we are built. I mean, even if you think about our bodies physiologically, we literally grow against resistance. If you want to grow a muscle, You don't sit there and like nurture it and massage it and say you're beautiful to it. You fucking put it under load to the point where it's cramping. And that is how that muscle develops. And psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, we are the same. Like I'm not a religious person, but if I was to go out on a religious limb, you don't find God by trying to be some perfect person. You find God by looking in the mirror and confronting all of your sin, right? Like you can do, you can wear the necklace, you can, have the beads and read the scripture. If you then turn around and go and like just do a bunch of fucked up stuff that is not in alignment with that practice, you are exactly 0 steps closer to that power. The challenge is the way. The hard is the way, because we are built to do hard things. And that is a fundamental belief of mine. I don't believe in hustle porn. I don't believe in burning the candle at both ends. I don't believe that, pain and struggle can become an addiction, just like anything else. And I've known people that addiction has driven them to the verge of suicide and to suicide. But we are built to do and capable of doing extremely hard things. And every hard thing and hard situation that I've been through, I do look back and I see so much beauty. I didn't at the time, but I see so much beauty.
And I think that's it's the outcome of seeking truth versus the outcome of seeking pleasure. If we seek truth, yes, we're going to go through challenging times in the moment, but they're going to be so much more fulfilling. If we seek pleasure, we'll get pleasure in the short term, but actually it's going to cause us a lot more suffering. So you might as well choose the less beaten path, the path less traveled, and again you'll see the fruits of that. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Another quote. Jung, Freud and Jung.
I love me some Jung.
Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Tell me about that.
One of the first questions that I had for the psychologist that I worked with, the main psychologist I worked with, she's a psychoanalyst and a neurobiologist, was, what the fuck is consciousness? Like how do you make someone conscious? I think I'm quite a conscious person. I know people that I don't think are very conscious people. What's the difference? Is it purely physical? Is it developmental? Is it a spiritual thing? I have always been fascinated by what's the difference? Because I know I meet plenty of people and they're good people, but then they're just people. But every now and then I meet someone and I'm like, you get it, you see it, you have that, you can see the code of the matrix. But what's the difference? And if there is a tangible difference, can we initiate that in a way to create more conscious people? I still don't have an answer to that. But the more conscious I have become in my life, I have been able to bear profoundly heavier loads for myself and for the people I care about and for the things that I believe are important. Which to me says that the inverse of that is also true. The less conscious you are, the less load you can bear. And by virtue of that, the less the people around you and the things that you believe are important benefit. So to me, it's a pretty simple equation. Seek growth, become more conscious, bring more of your gifts into the world. But you can't do that from a place of being on autopilot.
Yeah, awesome. another quote. Random quotes. I've got so many here. What should I choose? Alex Mosey. There is no greater waste of time than justifying your actions to people who have a life you don't want.
Yeah, I struggled with that a lot. I struggled with that a lot when I was younger. My solution to that was just don't talk to people. Well, because I found it really tiring. Like when I was 18, 19, 20, studying law and business at university, I was working 3 jobs. I was helping, kind of be involved in the raising of my 3 younger siblings. And I was just desperate to do something that was meaningful in some way. And business was the most obvious vehicle for me to be able to do that. And the amount of actually, there was one experience that stands out for me. I was at the start of my 3rd year. I was at the end of my 2nd year of law school. And I had gotten a job, which was, it wasn't exactly, but it was close to a graduate position in the legal sector of a corporate in Brisbane. And I worked that job for a year. And at the end of my 3rd year, I had the opportunity to go into business with my first business and 2 business partners. And that experience told me so much about not listening to and not justifying your life to other people that have a life you don't want. Because towards the end of your 3rd year in a traditional legal degree, you spend the 4th year trying to do, grad position placements and like working for free basically to get your foot in the door. So at the time that all of my colleagues were applying for the opportunity to work for free for 2 or 3 months to try and then get an interview to win a job that were very competitive, I'd put in my resignation to leave one of those jobs to go and start a business with 2 people in an industry that I knew almost nothing about. And the amount of shit that I copped, and the amount of... I had more than one person point blank just about say, who do you think you are? Like, you have the thing that we're all fighting for, and are so arrogant, and the doubt and the fear. Why would you do that? Why don't you just keep your job? Just wait for a couple of years before you start your business. Just climb the corporate ladder a little bit. That way you've got security and you've got on your resume that you worked at this firm for. And it was just so obvious to me. I was like, again, you guys are all playing a game over there. I'm playing a game over here. Like, I can't listen to you. And and I didn't have many friends because, like I said, easy to just avoid people. But that taught me so much, and that was so hard. It was so hard because I didn't have the confidence and the certainty that I have now. And I was just getting hit with a torrent of feedback from people who were very intelligent, very driven, very ambitious, saying what you're doing is insane. And not only is it insane, it's actually arrogant. And that was one of those moments to speak truth and make a decision from my perspective, or to comply with the external forces and just follow the beaten path. And I realized I had already learnt that lesson a few times in different ways, but that for me took that lesson to a whole new level, which was there is zero value in trying to justify why you do what you do to people who live a life that you don't want to live. Or, the inverse, taking advice from people that don't have the thing that you want in that area. I got, there's one person that was in my life that was a family member, though, shall remain anonymous, but was telling me about the benefits of purchasing property in this structure, and you want a cash flow, geared property, not a capital growth geared property for this and that. And it's also like any person that buys a capital growth property is a fucking idiot because of XYZ. Owns no property. What are you doing? I don't need your advice. I didn't ask for it, first off. But secondly, why would I listen to you? You don't have the thing that you're talking about, and you don't have the thing that I want. Your advice means zero, with all due love and respect. But it's such an easy trap to fall into. Listening to people for no other reason than because they're speaking.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good tool to use for people who are starting out on their journey of wherever they want to go, whatever path they want to take of truth is, when you're receiving advice or when you're seeking it, does this person actually have what you want? Do they have the life that you want? I think that's a really powerful thing.
Do they have the life that you want? Have they achieved what you want to achieve? And do they have the values that you have? Because again, someone could give you advice and that advice could actually be correct for a person of their values in their situation, trying to get where they're trying to go. It's not about, like, the advice is actually not good or bad. It's just advice. The advice only becomes effective once you map it onto the person that's going to apply that advice. And so you and I both have this, like, we lean towards business from a wealth and investment perspective because that's the model that we like. I understand nothing about crypto. Nothing. I've had people spruik to me the benefits of crypto, and I'm like, well, that's awesome, man. Like, go hard. I know multiple people that have made 6 and 7 figure profits from crypto. It's insane. I don't care because I'm just not interested in that. That doesn't make me a bad investor. That doesn't make them wrong. It just means that that advice and that strategy, when mapped onto my world, doesn't work. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to go and jump into crypto based on FOMO and everything else. Because again, I'm the author of my life. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be one person right and one person wrong.
Yeah, it comes back again, being the author of your life, going where you want to go, choosing and being okay with the consequences of that, good, bad, and indifferent. Still going? Yep, it is.
Still going.
Final quote. You can only lose if you're playing to win. If your pursuit is truth, there is no such thing as losing, only growth.
Yes. Yeah, I really struggled with the concept of failure, the whole fear of failure thing. When I was younger, on multiple fronts, whether it was business or relationships, or I was so hyper aware of other people's perspective of me, and it was impossible to do anything in my life because the steering wheel had like 50 hands on it, and I was getting yanked in the direction of what she would think or what he would think, or what does that make me, or what would the broader people of the world think. And it's just a terrible way to live. Like take the philosophy and everything else out of it. That's a terrible way to live. So I think building a relationship with failure and actually defining what failure means to you, like growth is one of my core values, and it's very close to the top. But if I don't believe that I'm capable of defining what failure does or doesn't look like, then I'm going to stay away from things where I can potentially fail. And unfortunately, that's just about everything that's worthwhile. If you want to build an intimate relationship, you need to acknowledge the fact that chances are you're going to fail at that relationship, or that relationship will fail. The label that then gets applied to you if that happens is going to define whether or not you even initiate the conversation with the girl at the bar in the first place. And I just think most people don't realize that, again, they hold the pen to write on that label whatever they want. And that's not to say that failure doesn't exist. Failure does exist. And I've failed at so many things, it's not funny. I think a lot of conversations around fear of failure, or, you know, you didn't fail, you learned, is very much it's just like stereotypical personal development bullshit.
It's very heady.
It's very heady, and it feels like a cop out. Like when I had a massive wall of quotes in multiple rooms and places that I've lived over the years. And one of those was a quote by Les Brown that I can't remember, but it was something to do with failure and, like, you know, falling down 7 times, standing up 8, or whatever it was. And it always felt like a bit of a pat on the head. It's like, you didn't fail, you learned. You failed. And so I think, again, not deluding yourself. If I try and start a business and that business tanks, did I fail? Well, yeah, because your goal was to get a business to $2 million in revenue, and you didn't, and you had to close the business. So you failed. You also learned a heap of stuff, which is fantastic. But I think the art of not deluding yourself is such a tricky skill to develop, because it's not about pretending like failure doesn't exist. Like, in a very real sense, failure does exist. And I don't, like, me personally, I'm not a, you know, cast away the anchor and sail into the storm, because the worst thing that, you know, shoot for the moon, the worst thing that happens is if you fail, you land amongst the stars. Like, no, the worst thing that happens is you're fucking floating through space and you're dead. So that's, like, for me, that's not my style. But I do believe that any individual failure you need to put in context. And it is actually your responsibility to put it in context. If you fail at launching a business, or you start a relationship and it fails, if you stop at that business or that relationship failed, therefore I am a failure, you haven't gone deep enough. You need to actually go back to that situation, go back to that chapter of your life, and deliberately dig a little bit deeper for the lessons, because they're not mutually exclusive. You can fail and learn so much, and that failure will, it almost guaranteed, lead you to success. And that was a really difficult thing for me to get my head around. If you want to succeed, you have to fail. Like, just practically. Like, if I want to be able to play a sport really well, I'm going to have to fail at that sport countless times to build up the necessary reps to have the skill set to be able to win. So failure literally equals success, if you can stick with it.
And I think that's again, seeking truth, right? Because if you zoom out far enough, those failures are almost worth it, versus staying at the first failure.
It's macro micro. Like, again, people don't. I think people look for people. We as humans look for black and white, because black and white is so much easier. I failed. It's either I failed, or it's I'm still a success. Failure's not a thing. Like, both are like the first sentence of the essay. So either which approach you take, you're missing the gold. Yeah, I failed at that situation, and I also learned a lot. And I'm also making the decision to keep going despite of the failure, which means that my next performance is going to be better, which means that if I keep doing that over a long enough period of time, I'm going to get to a level of success. That said, I'm also going to fail a heap more times, and that's going to be hard. And that's going to build my confidence and my resilience in myself. Like, you got to go to the gray. Like, all the good is in the gray. The black and white is just for split-second decision-making, but it doesn't serve. It's too low resolution. And many times when I'm mentoring and supporting someone in a business context, and many of the people I work with are very intelligent, very accomplished, highly ambitious people. But where the sticking point is they have a low resolution take on a problem that requires a substantial amount of context for them to be able to move forward and improve the situation or the results that they're seeking. And you just got to dial it up. You can't sit with a low resolution take on a complex problem. And life is complex.
Eric Collins, thank you so much. Part 2.
Thanks, brother.
Complete.
Appreciate it, man.
EricCollins.co.
EricCollins.co.
You're going to have some social media footage, I'm sure, be coming out in the next couple of months. And
Yeah, we're ramping all of that up.
amazing.
Slowly. So one step at a time. Got to focus on my key constraints first. So.
Yeah, that's it. One step at a time. Thank you, man. Thanks so much for being my first ever guest. And I'm sure we'll have many more episodes.
Sounds good to me.